Have you ever sat down at your computer, looked down at those familiar keys, and thought this arrangement makes zero sense? The letters are completely scrambled. A sits next to S, B is buried near the bottom, and the most common English letters are scattered all over the place, like someone dropped a dictionary and never bothered to pick it up. Here on Ordinary Why. For something billions of people use every single day, the QWERTY keyboard feels almost deliberately confusing. And the truth behind it stretches back more than 150 years. In the late 1860s, an American inventor named Christopher Latham Sholes was working in Wisconsin. Sholes was a newspaper editor, printer, and tinkerer who, along with colleagues Carlos Glidden and Samuel Soleil, set out to build a practical writing machine. Early versions of what would become the typewriter looked nothing like the sleek devices we know today. Some prototypes had keys arranged like a piano keyboard, with letters lined up in neat alphabetical rows. The first models, Sholes experimented with used 2 long rows of characters arranged in alphabetical order. It made perfect sense on paper. Anyone who could recite the alphabet should be able to find every letter without hunting. In theory, alphabetical order should have been the fastest and most intuitive system possible. Reality quickly proved otherwise. These early machines used a system of type bars, long metal arms with embossed letters at the end that swung up to strike an inked ribbon and leave an impression on paper. When a typist worked quickly, especially with common English letter combinations such as th, he, nd, or neighboring type bars would swing toward the same point at nearly the same moment and collide. The delicate machinery would jam. Clearing a jam meant stopping, reaching into the mechanism, and carefully separating the tangled bars. For a device meant to speed up writing, constant mechanical failure was unacceptable. Sholes and his team spent years rearranging the keys through pure trial and error, guided by practical experience rather than pure theory. They began separating letters that frequently appeared together in English. The goal was not to make typing slower, despite a popular myth that still circulates today. The popular story claims QWERTY was deliberately designed to slow typists down so the machine would not jam. That explanation is tidy and memorable, but historical evidence does not fully support it as the primary intention. The original patents and contemporary accounts do not state that the inventors set out to handicap the user. Instead, the layout evolved to allow reasonably fast typing without the type bars colliding. By placing common pairs farther apart, the arms had a better chance of returning to their resting position before the next strike. Some modern researchers also point to influence from telegraph operators. Many of the earliest users of Sholes's machines were people who transcribed Morse code messages. Alphabetical arrangements proved awkward for them, and feedback from these operators helped shape successive versions of the keyboard. One intermediate layout from around 1870 moved the vowels to a higher row and rearranged the consonants. By the time Sholes sold the manufacturing rights to the Remington Company in 1873, the arrangement was already close to what we recognize today. Remington's mechanics made the final adjustments that produced the classic QWERTY layout, the name coming from the first 6 letters on the top letter row. One persistent anecdote claims that the letter R was moved so that a salesman could type the word typewriter using only the top row, demonstrating the machine's capabilities in a single dramatic flourish. Whether that story is entirely accurate or partly promotional legend, the layout that emerged from Remington's workshops became the one that stuck. In 1878, the Remington No. 2 typewriter introduced a shift key for upper and lowercase letters and carried the QWERTY arrangement into wider commercial use. Other manufacturers eventually followed. By the 1890s, when major typewriter companies formed agreements and standardized on the layout, QWERTY had become the de facto industry standard. Once a critical mass of typists had been trained on QWERTY, the layout acquired enormous inertia. Typing schools taught it. Offices bought machines that used it. Secretaries, clerks, and reporters developed muscle memory that was expensive and time-consuming to retrain. When new typewriter designs appeared that solved the mechanical jamming problem entirely, using different mechanisms that no longer relied on swinging type bars, the QWERTY arrangement remained. The original mechanical reason for the scrambled letters had disappeared, yet the habit remained. This is a classic example of path dependence. An early solution to a temporary problem becomes locked in by later social and economic forces long after the original problem is gone. In the 1930s, educator August Dvorak and his brother-in-law William Dealey designed an alternative layout specifically to improve efficiency. The Dvorak simplified keyboard placed the most common English letters on the home row, balanced the workload more evenly between the hands, and reduced the distance fingers needed to travel. Studies and advocates claimed significant gains in speed and reductions in fatigue. Yet Dvorak never displaced QWERTY. The cost of retraining millions of typists, rewriting instructional materials, and replacing or converting existing machines proved prohibitive. Later controlled studies produced mixed results, and many organizations decided the potential benefits did not justify the disruption. Other modern layouts, such as Colmac and Workman, have appeared for computer users, offering various trade-offs in efficiency and ease of learning, but none has achieved more than a small niche following. When computers arrived in the second half of the 20th century, the keyboard layout was carried over almost unchanged. Early computer terminals and teletype machines already used QWERTY. Software, operating systems, and hardware manufacturers simply adopted what people already knew. The mechanical constraints of the typewriter no longer applied, yet the arrangement persisted. Today, the average person learns to type on QWERTY keyboards in school or through practice, builds speed through repetition, and rarely questions the underlying design. Switching layouts requires weeks or months of reduced productivity while new muscle memory forms. For most individuals and organizations, that temporary cost is not worth the theoretical long-term gains. The keyboard we use every day is therefore a living fossil. It carries the imprint of 19th century mechanical engineering, the practical needs of telegraph clerks, commercial decisions made by the Remington Company, and the powerful force of collective habit. Alphabetical order would have been simpler and more logical if typewriters had never jammed, and if no one had ever needed to type at speed on early machines. But history does not optimize for pure logic. It optimizes for what works well enough at a given moment, and then gets locked in by training, infrastructure, and expectation. Every time your fingers fly across the keys without conscious thought, you are performing a skill that was shaped by problems that no longer exist. The scrambled letters are a reminder that technology is rarely designed from a clean slate. It accumulates solutions, compromises, and accidents, and those accumulated decisions become the invisible architecture of everyday life. If you enjoyed this deep dive into one of life's ordinary mysteries, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to Ordinary Why.